So it's Happy New Year and Happy New Term. And for this new term, we're going to be working with particular themes over 3-week blocks. And we're going to begin with the sea. So I'm at the Chambers Street Museum, the National Museum of Scotland, and they have some terrific displays, lighthouse models, ship models. There's a lovely one over here of shipbuilding on the east coast. This little scene of the boat being built with the buildings and houses and so on all around. So for this first week, what I'm going to be doing myself in this video, and I'll have some of you doing on Monday if you come to the museum, is just making some initial sketches, exploring subject matter that could relate to the theme. So for example here, I'm working with some grey sugar paper, I've got a Conte pencil, and I'm just making some studies of this lighthouse. I'm working on grey paper, so that means I can, with my brown pencil, I can build up tone, I can put down lines, and I can also introduce a lighter contrast. Maybe I'll put that around the lighthouse. But at this stage I don't have any particular image, composition or image in mind. I really just want to have a completely open mind and see what I can get from the different inspiration that I'm seeing around me. When I draw a lighthouse with this sort of form, actually it's making me think of a similar kind of monument at Edinburgh Airport, the air traffic control tower, which has a similar sort of shape. So that just makes me think of, travel and associated structures. But you might also be interested in, using a lighthouse as a kind of symbolic theme, a metaphor for finding your way in dangerous circumstances. So a study of a lighthouse, and I'll look at some other things as well. I was really taken with this model of an East Coast shipyard, partly because of the light. And although it's a very, as I draw it, I'm discovering, of course, it's a very complicated display. What I was struck, just seeing it from this particular angle, is that actually a lot of it is in shadow, and therefore there's a kind of mystery to it. So by working with my grey paper and my Conte pencil, an awful lot of this very busy, complicated element of the whatever the structures are, the sort of scaffolding, and all of that's a little bit hidden in shadow, and we just get this light top to the boat. So to my eye, and to my mind, thinking of subject matter related to the sea, just this activity of building the boats and depicting it in an atmospheric way, I think has a lot of potential for a subject related to the sea. And by working with my grey paper, getting some darker, more complicated areas of the structure of the boat and its scaffolding, and then just heightening parts with the white chalk, I can manage the light, and then therefore I can manage the drama. And that might be a subject that I could possibly even combine with some of my figurative studies that we'll be doing next week when we have Pete, our model, in the studio. Maybe there's something to do with building boats that I would explore. So it's not easy to film or photograph some of these displays because of the reflections of the glass, but there's a whole number of fabulous models of ships, sailed ships, different sorts of boats. And as with any subject, any still life or other subject, I think it's really useful to look at them from different angles. Make your studies, make your sketches, find what's the most interesting or evocative or useful angle. I love this little boat here, it's just like a little rowing boat. Something about the scale, it makes me think of there's a great Ron Muick sculpture of a little man in a little boat. And because this is a little boat against the wide sea and these other bigger ships, it's got a sense of vulnerability to it. So that might be something that I would explore. I might do some drawings of this little boat from different angles and try and express something of that scale. So I'm just exploring my little boat from different angles. The architecture of a boat is always quite challenging, especially with perspective, because these curving lines running along the rim of the boat, and maybe there are boards, planks, there's a word for that, clinker built. But again, I think these materials, a bit of grey paper, some charcoal or a Conte pencil in my case, mean that you can smudge, you can draw lines, and then you can use chalk to sort of heighten, bring out some contrast, some emphasis. So I'm looking at it from different angles. I haven't done anything about its scale yet. The point I made about it being this sort of vulnerable vessel. So I might have to explore that against something bigger, maybe against the sea. Maybe it's a very small version with a lot of sea. That's what we've got in the display here. They've got this huge photograph of crashing waves, and then this little boat set against it. Something else I might be thinking about is if I were to use this boat and maybe even use it together with some of the model drawings from next week, this boat might be in water. So I've got to start to invent a little bit where the edge of the craft disappears underwater. So there's a whole number of things to think about, but I don't have to solve those issues at the moment. At the moment, I'm really just looking for some subject matter, and having found some possible themes, I might well need more material. I might need particular poses from my model, I might need to do more research. But it's a great phase, actually, a great stage where nothing is decided yet. All sorts of things are possible, and probably the biggest challenge is actually narrowing down the ideas. And you'll probably all find that you've got lots of ideas. Starting with sketches, this is where sketchbooks are so useful. You can look back over sketchbooks and find ideas, themes that you can pick up again and develop. So I predict there'll be a lot of material, some of which can be developed into something in the next 3 weeks. Other things may be saved up for future projects. So as you know, it's a pretty amazing museum. There's a whole area here which is to do with the Pacific Islands, the Pacific Islanders, and we've got these amazing different sorts of crafts, canoes with areas for, catching fish and dealing with your catch. Other fantastic varieties of vessel. And again, I get a little bit stuck on the scale, but these small scale models, they're just so evocative, aren't they? You might think of ships in bottles. There's a great tradition in Port Seton in particular, near to Edinburgh, where many fishermen make models of their own boats and of others' fishing boats. So that's a Hawaiian canoe, and there's a Maori canoe over here. So I'm probably making your life more and more difficult just by giving you yet more possibilities, and that's before we've gone next door. So here we are next door with this terrific wildlife panorama and sea creatures suspended above the museum, and the strangest, most exotic but also dynamic subject matter. So it may be that you think of approaching the sea from the point of view of sea creatures. And I'm going to go downstairs where there's a great display of silhouettes of the different shapes of a whole variety of sea creatures, and see what I can get, what kinds of studies I can get from them. Or maybe a quick look at the narwhals. I did a children's class here at the beginning of the week, and of course the narwhals were very popular. We had quite a few. So when I brought the children's group here at the beginning of the week, we started looking at these amazing silhouettes of different size sea creatures. And as I'm sure you can guess, we did some charcoal rub-away drawing and used that as a way of seeing the shapes. This is a great display because it really shows it's almost the design potential of these fantastic shapes, the variety that there is in each of the creatures. So I forgot my charcoal today, but I'm going to try a little bit of pastel rub-away drawing. Going for something small again. So I want to work with my seahorse. Let's see if we can do this. So I've just covered an area of the page with some of the pastel pencil. And I just want to look at the negative shape. It's curious actually, the seahorse seems to be tilted. I think that's how they swim, at a funny angle. So I've done a little bit with the eraser, and then I can build up a bit more of that rough shape that I started with. It's very like a chess piece. I don't know why that is. So this is taking me off in a completely different direction, looking at some of the shapes of these sea creatures. I'm not sure where that would take me exactly. But as I've said, this is the idea of this first week, really just to gather material and see if something speaks to you in terms of wanting to develop some images which relate to that theme of the sea. I wouldn't try and combine everything. It should be a case of identifying things that interest you and seeing how they can be developed. But it's highly likely, I would say, given the amount of material that's here, or given the potential of such a theme as the sea, that you'll find there's a lot of ideas you can work with. But hopefully you can work first through sketching, through drawing, maybe then putting together compositions, seeing next week with a figure and the poses you might get from the model, whether they would be part of your idea, and gradually working towards some sort of composition, possibly painted or working in mixed media. So really it's the old sketchbook to canvas idea. We start this week with the sketchbook and some ideas related to the sea, and work over 3 weeks seeing what other people do as well. That's always very useful to get a range of approaches, and you might end up with a representational painting, you might end up with a design, who knows. We've even had some great sculptural things done with previous projects. So I'm going to send this out with an email with some ideas of artists that you might consult, and with some photographs for those of you who aren't able to make it to the museum. You'll probably do your own research and perhaps find your own reference material. Okay, so I look forward to this. Cheerio now.